Hey, you there, stop. Silas Albright turned slowly, clutching a small bottle of aged balsamic vinegar. Two uniformed officers marched down the imported goods aisle of the upscale market. Their boots echoed sharply on the polished floor. The taller one, Officer Davies, pointed, "Put the item down and step away." Shoppers turned, frozen mid-step among artisan cheeses and hand-pressed olive oils. Silas, a retired professor with graying temples and dark skin, stood calmly. "Is something wrong?" he asked, voice level. "We got a call," Davies said. "Suspicious activity. Black male, mid to late 70s, lingering. That's you, isn't it?" Silas blinked. "I was reading the label. I'm a regular here." Officer Miller, the second cop, chuckled. "We've heard that before. Let's see some ID." Silas gently placed the vinegar bottle back on the shelf. "I haven't done anything. Why am I being singled out?" "You match the report," Miller said. "Cooperate, and we'll sort this out quickly." "I'm not refusing," Silas said quietly. "Just asking why I'm being treated like a suspect." Davy stepped forward and took Silas's arm. Not roughly, but with authority. "Step over here, sir. Let's keep this civil." They led him toward a small alcove near the exit marked customer service. Shoppers tried not to stare, though some lifted phones, recording discreetly. "Bag," Miller demanded. Silas handed over his leather satchel without protest. Inside, a worn copy of The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, a spiral-bound notebook, glasses, and a receipt from the Book Nook, a local bookstore. Davies flipped through the book with a frown. "You always carry literature?" "I taught literature," Silas said, a trace of pride in his voice. "What about this receipt?" "From this morning," Silas explained. "Bought a first-edition poetry collection." Miller sneered. "Nice story." A nearby cashier hesitated, then walked over. "I recognize him," she said nervously. "He shops here, buys imported stuff sometimes. He's polite." "This doesn't concern you," Davies snapped. Silas reached into his inner coat pocket and pulled out his ID with trembling fingers. Davies read it aloud. Silas Albright. Willow Creek Lane. Age 78. Miller rolled his eyes. "So what? Doesn't mean anything." Silas looked directly at them. "Officers, am I being accused of a crime?" "Sir," Davies said, shifting uncomfortably, "we're responding to a report." A woman wearing a brightly colored scarf stepped from the crowd. "He's a retired professor. I had him at the university." "This is wrong." The murmurs around the store grew louder. The store manager finally rushed over, his name tag flashing. "Marcus, store director." "What's going on here?" he asked. Silas raised a hand. "Allow me," he said. "I've been shopping quietly. These officers approached me because I looked suspicious. The only thing I'm guilty of is being black, older, and curious about balsamic vinegar." Marcus opened his mouth, but said nothing. Outside, flashing lights grew closer. Another cruiser pulled up. From it stepped Sergeant Reynolds, a black man in his 40s with a steady gaze. "What's going on?" he asked. Miller mumbled, "Possible loitering." He matched the report. "Report from who?" Reynolds demanded. "Anonymous caller," Davies muttered. Reynolds turned to Silas. "Sir, are you all right?" "I am now," Silas replied. Reynolds addressed the officers. "You found nothing. No items taken. No aggressive behavior. And this man's ID checks out." Davies nodded reluctantly. "Then you're dismissed from the scene," Reynolds said. "Mr. Albright, I apologize on behalf of the department." Silas nodded, but said nothing. His silence carried weight. The crowd began to disperse, but the moment hung heavy in the air. Phones still recorded. Whispers turned to reflection. The young cashier stepped forward again. "Mr. Albright?" He turned. "Thank you for staying calm," she said. "I'm sorry they treated you that way." Silas offered a small, knowing smile. "Don't be sorry. Just remember." He picked up the bottle of vinegar he'd set down, carried it to the counter, and paid in exact change. As he exited, the automatic doors whooshed open. The sunlight was warm, but he felt the chill of the moment settle into his bones. He wasn't just a man in a market. He was a mirror held up to a society that still judged by the color of skin before the content of a shopping bag. Sergeant Reynolds crossed his arms, studying Silas carefully. The older man met his gaze with calm dignity, despite the obvious tension in the air. And have you found any reason to believe he violated any store policies or laws? Reynolds asked firmly. Davies, one of the younger officers, shook his head reluctantly. Not yet, Sergeant. Reynolds exhaled sharply, then turned to Silas. Sir, I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience this has caused. Would you mind if we clarify a few details? Silas inclined his head politely. I understand your duty, Sergeant. I will answer any reasonable questions. The store manager stepped forward. Mr. Albright is a valued customer here. We've never had any problems with him. Davies looked ready to protest, but Reynolds held up a hand. Let's keep this professional. Turning back to Silas, Reynolds said, We'll review the store's security footage. If there's no evidence of wrongdoing, you'll be free to leave. For the first time since the incident began, a faint smile appeared on Silas's lips. But before they moved towards the security office, Silas spoke quietly to the woman who had earlier defended him. My dear lady, he said gently, making her smile with surprise. May I have a word with you? She nodded, confused but pleased. Then, turning to the officers, Silas took a deep breath. I've faced greater challenges than this. I won't pursue any formal complaint on one condition. A hush fell over the gathered crowd. Every person within earshot held their breath, curious to hear what the quiet professor would say. Sergeant Reynolds was the first to speak. And what exactly is that condition, Mr. Albright? Silas pressed his lips together thoughtfully. Then, with surprising steadiness, he said, I want these officers to join me for a cup of tea in the store cafe. I do not want to leave feeling like a suspect, nor do I want them to leave feeling like I'm a threat. A murmur of disbelief swept through the onlookers. Davies scowled, Miller snorted, but Reynolds looked genuinely intrigued. You want to have tea? Reynolds asked. Silas nodded. Yes, I want to speak with him, person to person, and try to understand how this situation escalated. The store manager quickly ushered everyone to the small cafe inside the store. Though tension lingered, there was also a growing sense of relief that things hadn't turned uglier. Within minutes, Silas, Davies, and Miller sat around a small table, warm cups of tea before them. Sergeant Reynolds and a few curious customers watched from a respectful distance. Silas wrapped his hands around the mug, letting the warmth soothe his slightly trembling fingers. I spent many years studying history, he began quietly, his eyes fixed on the two younger officers. And I've learned that assumptions can be dangerous. They build walls where bridges are needed. He paused, then continued, his voice gentle but firm. I bear no ill will toward you. But I wonder, why did you focus on me? Was it my age? My appearance? Something else? The unspoken question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Officer Miller cleared his throat, the sound surprisingly loud in the stillness. Finally, he met Silas's kind eyes, uncertainty flickering there. We receive a call, he mumbled. Someone reported a man acting out of place near the imported oils. Out of place? Silas repeated, raising a gentle eyebrow. I was simply admiring the varieties. It takes a moment to appreciate their nuances. Davies sighed. I suppose we made a snap judgment. We get many calls, well, you know. He trailed off, struggling to find the words. Sir, I apologize. Maybe we were too quick to assume. A silence followed his admission. Then, the tension cracked like ice breaking under the sun, replaced by something raw and uncertain. Silas dipped his head slightly. It takes courage to admit when one is wrong. I don't want to shame you, gentlemen. But please, remember this feeling next time you meet someone who doesn't fit your expectations. Sergeant Reynolds stepped forward, relief evident in his posture. He gently placed a hand on Silas's shoulder. Mr. Albright, I'm truly sorry you had to endure this. You're free to go. We'll address the concerns and review our procedures. The store manager hurried over, face still flushed. Mr. Albright, your purchases today are on the house. It's the least we can do. Around them, customers who witnessed the ordeal applauded quietly. Some wiped tears, seeing Silas shake hands with the officers who had first treated him with suspicion. Silas had one final request. Gentlemen, he said, his voice quiet but heavy with meaning, May I ask one more thing? Davies and Miller exchanged a glance, then nodded. What is it? They asked. Promise me, Silas said slowly, rising with the help of his cane, that you will approach the next person you find suspicious with the same respect you would show your own family. They hesitated, then nodded sincerely. As the crowd parted, Silas walked out with measured steps, never once looking like a victim. Instead, he was a man who had quietly rewritten the story.